Admiral stood in the command center of Orbital Station Phoenix, staring at the holographic display before him. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he didn't notice. The screen showed something that shouldn't exist: 9900 red dots appearing beyond Mars' orbit. Each dot represented a warship. Each warship belonged to the Empire. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," said Lieutenant from the communications station. His voice shook slightly. The young officer had never seen anything like this. Nobody had. Nodded, "Put it through." The hologram shifted, and a face appeared. The commander looked almost human, except for the gray skin and the extra set of eyes that sat where eyebrows should be. He wore armor that gleamed like polished steel, and his expression showed complete confidence. "Primitive humans," the commander said. "I am Commander Thresh of the Imperial Fleet. We have come to claim your world for the Empire. You have 72 hours to surrender. If you comply, you will become workers. If you resist, you will become dust." The transmission ended before could respond. The command center fell silent. Everyone looked at the Admiral, waiting for orders. Pressed a button on his console. "Get me President, and someone bring me fresh coffee." 15 minutes later, the President's face appeared on a private channel. Had been in a meeting with the Earth Defense Council when they arrived. Her dark hair was pulled back tight, and her eyes were sharp and focused. "Admiral, how bad is it?" she asked. 9,900 ships," replied. "All of them bigger than anything we've built. They want surrender in 72 hours. Was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for this moment. "Is everything ready?" she asked. "Yes, Madam President. We've been ready for 3 years." "Then give them their 72 hours. Let them think we're afraid. Let them think they've already won." The transmission ended, turned to his officers. "Begin protocol blackout. Send the activation codes to all stations. Wake everyone up." Across the solar system, things began to move. On the moon, Captain Dong received an encrypted message in his quarters at base. He had been a fighter pilot for 8 years, but he had never flown in real combat. He read the message twice, then walked to the hangar bay. The bay was carved deep into the lunar rock. Inside, rows of black fighters sat waiting. They didn't look like the training craft he usually flew. These ships had no markings, no flags, no names. They were built for one purpose: to kill. "Finally," Dong whispered to himself. He had been training for this day since he was 20 years old. In Switzerland, deep beneath the CERN facility, Doctor worked at her computer terminal. Above ground, tourists and scientists thought CERN was just a physics research center. They were wrong. For the past decade, CERN had been building something else: weapons that could turn subatomic particles into beams of destruction. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. Around her, massive machines began to hum with power. The particle accelerators were waking up. Soon, they would be aimed at the sky. "How long until we're at full power?" asked her assistant, a young man named Jinwoo. 6 hours, replied. "They won't even know what hit them." On Earth, billions of people watched the news. The message had been broadcast on every channel. Governments tried to keep people calm, but panic spread anyway. In cities around the world, people ran to stores to buy supplies. Some tried to leave the cities and hide in the countryside. But not everyone panicked. In military bases hidden across the planet, soldiers checked their weapons and waited. They had been told this day might come. They had trained for it. They were ready. President addressed the planet from the Emergency Command Center in Seoul. The broadcast went to every screen on Earth. "My fellow humans," she began, "today we face an enemy that thinks we are weak. They believe we will surrender without a fight. They think we are primitive and afraid. They are wrong." She paused, looking directly into the camera. 15 years ago, we discovered we were not alone in the universe. We captured a scout ship from the Empire. We learned their technology. We studied their tactics. and we prepared for this exact moment. They believe they are the greatest power in the galaxy. They believe their 9,900 ships are unstoppable, but they have never faced humanity before. They don't know what we're capable of. They don't know that when you threaten our families, our children, our home, we don't surrender. We fight. The broadcast ended. Across Earth, the panic began to fade. People stopped running. They started to understand. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning of something else. Back on Orbital Station Phoenix, Admiral watched the countdown timer. 68 hours until the deadline. They were holding position beyond Mars, waiting. They thought the humans were preparing to surrender. They thought Earth was defenseless. Colonel Sangmi's voice came through on a secure channel. She commanded Ghost Squadron, a fleet of stealth ships that officially didn't exist. "Admiral, we're in position. They don't see us." "Good," replied. "Stay hidden. When the time comes, you know what to do." Looked at the tactical display again. The ships hadn't moved. They were so confident they weren't even maintaining defensive formations. They thought the battle was already over. Lieutenant approached with a, "Sir, we've intercepted some of their communications. They're talking about which cities they want to rule after we surrender. They're arguing about who gets which territory." Smiled. It was the same smile President had worn earlier. Let them argue. In 68 hours, they won't need to worry about it. He looked out the station window at Earth below. The planet looked peaceful from orbit, blue and green and beautiful. But beneath that peaceful surface, weapons were moving into position. Soldiers were preparing. Scientists were activating machines that could tear ships apart at the molecular level. They had sent 9,900 ships to conquer humanity. They thought it was enough. They thought humans would be easy prey. They were about to learn why that was a mistake. 24 hours had passed since they arrived. Commander Thresh sat in his command chair aboard the massive battleship Dominator, drinking something that tasted like bitter wine. Around him, his officers were relaxed and confident. The humans hadn't responded to the surrender demand. That meant they were too afraid to even speak. "Commander," said his tactical officer, "shall we send a demonstration force? Show them what happens when they ignore us?" Thresh nodded. "Send 100 destroyers. Have them eliminate the human satellites. Let these primitives watch their communication network die." The destroyers broke formation and moved toward Earth's orbit. They were each the size of a small city, armed with plasma cannons and missile batteries, more than enough to destroy some basic satellites. Captain Dong watched from Moon Base as the ships approached. His fighter was ready, but his orders were clear. "Wait. Not yet. Let them get closer." "They're targeting our satellites," said his wingman, a pilot named One. "Shouldn't we launch?" "Not yet," Dong replied, his hands tight on the controls. "Trust the plan." On Earth, in the CERN facility, Doctor watched her screens. The particle accelerators were at full power now. The massive underground ring hummed with barely contained energy. This machine had been designed to smash atoms together to study the universe's secrets. But her team had modified it. Now it could focus those particles into a beam and shoot them into space at nearly the speed of light. "Target locked," said Jinwoo from his console. "Waiting for your command." "Fire," said calmly. Invisible beams of accelerated particles shot upward from multiple points on Earth's surface. They moved so fast that the ships didn't even detect them until it was too late. The beams hit 3 destroyers simultaneously. The ship's shields, designed to stop missiles and energy weapons, were useless against particles moving at relativistic speeds. The beams punched through the hulls like they were made of paper. The 3 ships exploded silently in the vacuum of space. Commander Thresh jerked forward in his chair. "What was that? Report." "We've lost 3 ships, sir. We don't know what hit them." Before Thresh could respond, more beams fired from Earth, then from the Moon, then from what looked like simple mining stations on asteroids throughout the system. Everywhere they looked, weapons they didn't know existed were firing. 12 more destroyers died, then 20, then 30. Evasive maneuvers, Thresh shouted. Return fire, where are those shots coming from? But the beams were invisible and moved too fast to dodge. Within 5 minutes, 47 destroyers had been completely destroyed. The remaining ships scattered, trying to get out of range. This is impossible, Thresh's tactical officer screamed. They're primitives, they barely have space travel. Thresh stood up, his 4 eyes wide with shock. We were deceived. Sound the alert, all ships to combat formation. On the moon, Captain Dong received the signal he'd been waiting for. Ghost Squadron launch. Massive doors opened in the lunar surface. Hidden hangars that they had never detected suddenly revealed themselves. Hundreds of black fighters poured out into space. They had no lights, no heat signatures, no emissions. They were designed to be invisible until the moment they attacked. Dong's fighter shot forward. His targeting computer locked onto a cruiser. The ship was trying to retreat, its engines burning bright as it accelerated. Dong fired a spread of kinetic missiles. Simple metal rods accelerated to tremendous speeds. They cost almost nothing to make, but at those velocities, they hit like nuclear bombs. The cruiser's shields flickered and died. The missiles struck home, tearing through the hull. The ship broke apart, spilling atmosphere and bodies into space. Target destroyed, one called out, moving to next target. All around the solar system, the same scene played out. Colonel Sangmi's Ghost Squadron appeared from hiding spots near Jupiter's moons. These ships were larger than fighters but still small enough to avoid detection. They moved in packs, surrounding isolated ships and tearing them apart. Sangmi's voice was calm as she directed her squadron. Delta Group, take that battle cruiser. Echo Group, screen our left flank. Stay in formation. They tried to fight back, but they were confused and scattered. They had expected an easy conquest. Instead, they were being hunted. On Earth, Lieutenant worked frantically at his station. He had been studying the communications for hours. Their encryption was complex, but human computers were better than the expected. Slowly, the codes began to break. Admiral called out, I'm reading their command frequencies. I know where their flagship is. Admiral leaned over the console. Show me. Pointed to a position near Mars. The largest ship in their formation. That's the Dominator, their command vessel. Commander Thresh is aboard. Study the tactical display. They were trying to regroup, pulling back toward their flagship. They had lost nearly 300 ships in the first engagement. Now they were angry and scared. Good work, Lieutenant, said. Send the coordinates to all attack groups. We're going to make Commander Thresh regret coming to our solar system. In space, the battle continued. They had superior numbers and bigger ships, but they were fighting blind. Earth's forces knew exactly where every enemy ship was located. The humans had filled the solar system with sensors, hidden among satellites and space debris. Every movement was tracked and reported. Doctor fired her particle beams again and again. Each shot traveled across millions of kilometers in seconds. Each shot punched through shields and armor like they weren't even there. Her team worked in shifts, keeping the accelerators running continuously. How many have we destroyed? She asked Jinwoo. He checked his console. Current count is 243 confirmed kills. Estimates suggest another 50 ships damaged and retreating. Allowed herself a small smile. Good, but we're just getting started. They finally managed to form a defensive sphere around their flagship. Their remaining ships activated their shields to maximum power and pointed all weapons outward. They thought this would protect them. Commander Thresh stared at the casualty reports. In less than 6 hours, he had lost almost 300 ships. The humans hadn't lost a single major vessel. This was supposed to be a simple conquest. This was supposed to be easy. Get me the High Council, he ordered. We need reinforcements. His communications officer looked nervous. Sir, the nearest fleet is 3 weeks away. Thresh felt something he hadn't experienced in his entire military career: fear. The humans were still attacking. Their invisible fighters darted in and out of range, firing those deadly kinetic weapons. Their particle beams continued to strike from impossible distances, and they couldn't even see most of their attackers. "Prepare to retreat," Thresh said quietly. "Sir," his tactical officer couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You heard me. We're leaving. Send the coordinates for a jump to hyperspace. We'll return when we have proper intelligence and reinforcements." But as the fleet prepared to flee, they discovered another problem. Something was wrong with the space around Earth. The gravitational readings were fluctuating wildly. When ships tried to enter hyperspace, their drives failed. Some ships tried anyway. Those ships were torn apart by gravitational forces that shouldn't exist. The humans had trapped them. Admiral watched the failed escape attempts with satisfaction. Engineer Jinwoo's gravity well generators were working perfectly. They weren't going anywhere. "Send a message to Commander Thresh," said. "Tell him we're just getting started." Commander Thresh made his decision. Running was impossible. The only option left was to attack with everything he had. If they were going to die here, they would take Earth with them. "All ships," he broadcast across the fleet. "Full assault on the planet, destroy everything, leave nothing alive." 3,000 warships broke formation and charged toward Earth. Their weapons were armed and ready. Plasma cannons heated up. Missile bays opened. This was no longer a conquest. This was revenge. On orbital station Phoenix, alarms blared across every console. Admiral watched the massive wave of ships approaching. He had expected this. They were predictable. When cornered, they attacked with overwhelming force. "All defense platforms activate," ordered. "It's time to show them what Earth really looks like." Captain Dong pulled his fighter back toward Earth's orbit. Around him, thousands of other human fighters did the same. They weren't retreating. They were leading them into a trap. "Stay tight," he told his squadron. "Let them follow us into the defense grid." The ships crossed the moon's orbit, still accelerating. They thought the human fighters were fleeing in panic. They were wrong. Suddenly, space around Earth lit up. What had looked like dead satellites and space debris came alive. Thousands of objects that had been floating dormant for years activated simultaneously. They weren't satellites. They were mines, kinetic kill vehicles, automated weapons platforms. Engineer Jinwoo had spent 5 years designing this system. Each mine was simple, just a thruster and a solid metal core. But there were so many of them, and they moved so fast. They flew straight into the minefield. Explosions blossomed across space as ships collided with the mines. Shields overloaded. Hulls cracked. Some ships tried to turn back, but they crashed into the ships behind them. The formation collapsed into chaos. "Direct hits on 812 targets," reported Lieutenant. "Enemy formation is breaking apart." But they kept coming. Over 2,000 ships pushed through the minefield. They took heavy losses, but they were determined to reach Earth. On the surface, Wing Commander stood on the tarmac of Air Base. Above him, the sky was filled with contrails from launching fighters. Korea, China, Russia, America, Europe, Africa, every nation on Earth was sending its pilots into space. "Remember your training," told his pilots. "They are bigger but we're faster, use that." His fighter rose into the atmosphere. As he climbed higher, he saw them, hundreds of ships entering Earth's outer atmosphere. They were trying to land ground troops in major cities. They didn't understand Earth's atmosphere. They had conquered dozens of worlds, but most had thin air or none at all. Earth's thick atmosphere created problems for their large ships: drag, heat, turbulence. And then there were the weapons. As the landing craft descended, the air around them began to shimmer. Jinwoo's gravity well generators, hidden in facilities across the planet, activated. Space itself twisted. The laws of physics bent. Ships that were flying straight suddenly found themselves being pulled in wrong directions. Some ships were crushed by artificial gravity. Others were torn apart by gravitational shears. The pilots tried to compensate, but their instruments couldn't make sense of what was happening. Fighter swooped past a falling cruiser. The massive ship was breaking up, pieces of it falling away as gravity ripped it to pieces. He didn't fire a single shot. He didn't need to. "This is Wing Commander to all units," he broadcast. "The gravity wells are working. Just stay clear and let them fall." In the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Soong commanded the largest naval force Earth had ever assembled. Except these weren't ocean ships. They were submarines, modified to operate in both water and space. They had been hidden beneath the waves for 3 years, waiting for this moment. "Surface the fleet," Soong ordered. Massive vessels rose from the ocean. Water poured off their hulls as they activated their thrusters and shot into the sky. These ships were Earth's secret weapon. They had been watching for threats from space. They never looked down at the oceans. Soong's submarines entered orbit and immediately opened fire on the formation from below. The enemy ships were caught between Earth's surface defenses and the submarines rising behind them. They had nowhere to run. On the ground, some troops did manage to land. They appeared in cities across the planet, expecting to find terrified civilians. Instead, they found soldiers waiting for them. In Seoul, warriors in powered armor marched down a street, weapons ready. They were 12 feet tall, covered in armor that could stop bullets. They thought they were invincible. Then the buildings exploded. Not with bombs, with soldiers. Humans had hidden in every window, every doorway, every rooftop. They fired rockets, threw grenades, and used weapons they had never seen before. One warrior fell as an electromagnetic pulse weapon shut down his armor. Before he could recover, human soldiers swarmed over him, tearing the armor apart with mechanical precision. They had trained for this. They knew exactly where the weak points were. In New York, troops tried to set up a command post in Times Square, but the ground beneath them gave way. They fell into tunnels that hadn't existed on any map. Down there in the darkness, human forces hunted them. Dr. Bora watched from her laboratory in Seoul. She was a biotechnology expert, and she had prepared something special for the... Weeks ago, she had analyzed samples from the scout ship Earth had captured years before. She had studied biology, their chemistry, their weaknesses. Now she activated her creation, microscopic organisms engineered to eat ship hulls. She released them into the atmosphere. They were invisible, airborne, and spread by the wind. Within hours, ships began to malfunction. Their hull materials weakened, seals failed, life support systems broke down. They didn't understand what was happening. Their ships were rotting from the outside in. In orbit, Commander Thresh watched his fleet die. He had started with 9,900 ships. Now, after only 2 days of fighting, he had fewer than 6,000. And they were still trapped in this cursed solar system. "We need to retreat to the outer system," his tactical officer suggested. "Regroup beyond Jupiter." Thresh nodded. It was the only option left. All ships fall back, move to Mars orbit and hold position there. But as the fleet tried to withdraw, Colonel Sangmi's Ghost Squadron struck again. The stealth ships had been waiting, silent and invisible. Now they attacked the retreating from behind, targeting their engines and command bridges. Ships that had survived the initial assault now died trying to escape. They fired wildly, but they couldn't see their attackers. Sangmi's pilots were too skilled, too fast, too precise. Admiral opened a communication channel that would broadcast to every ship. President appeared on the transmission. She stood in the command center, looking directly at the camera. "Commander Thresh," she said, "you brought 9,900 ships to conquer Earth. You thought we were primitive. You thought we would be easy prey. You were wrong." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We've been preparing for you. We knew you would come eventually. We captured your scout ship 15 years ago. We learned everything about you, your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. You're not fighting primitives, Commander. You're fighting humans, and we don't surrender, we don't break. We fight until our enemy is destroyed." The transmission ended. Thresh sat in his command chair, feeling something he had never felt before: true fear. Not fear of death, but fear of failure. Fear that he had led his entire fleet into a trap they could never escape. Around Earth the battle continued, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. They were losing, and everyone knew it. The fleet had retreated beyond Mars orbit. What remained of Commander Thresh's once mighty armada now huddled together like frightened animals. 6,053 ships. That was all that remained from the 9,900 that had arrived so confidently just days ago. Thresh stared at the tactical display. His officers were silent. Everyone knew what they were thinking. How do we escape? Analysis, Thresh said to his tactical officer. What are our options? The officer's hands trembled as he worked his console. Sir, the humans have blocked all standard hyperspace jump points with their gravity weapons. Every time we try to jump, the drives fail. We've lost over 400 ships just trying to escape. Then we fight our way out, Thresh said. But even as he spoke the words, he knew they were empty. Fight who? The humans were everywhere and nowhere. They attacked from impossible angles. They moved faster than sensors could track, and their weapons were devastatingly effective. On Orbital Station Phoenix, Admiral initiated the final phase of Protocol Blackout. It was time to stop defending and start hunting. Send the activation codes, he ordered. Wake up the Hammer fleet. Throughout the solar system, massive objects began to move. They had been disguised as colony ships, ancient vessels from Earth's first attempts to reach other planets. They had scanned them early in the invasion and dismissed them as harmless relics. But they weren't colony ships. They were warships, massive, powerful, and built for one purpose: to destroy anything that threatened Earth. Captain Dong received his new orders while refueling at Moon Base. He read them twice to make sure he understood correctly. We're going on the offensive, he asked one. His wingman nodded, a fierce smile on her face. About time. I'm tired of defensive flying. Let's go hunting. Their squadron launched again, but this time they weren't defending Earth. They were heading toward Mars, toward the fleet. And they weren't alone. Thousands of human fighters formed up into attack wings, moving through space like schools of deadly fish. Doctor's team had been working nonstop at CERN. Now they had a new toy to play with: captured FTL drives. Human engineers had torn apart several disabled enemy ships, studying every component. Now they understood how faster-than-light travel worked. And they had mounted those drives on Earth's weapons platforms. Fire said. The particle beam accelerators fired as usual. But this time, the beams didn't travel through normal space. They punched through dimensions, using the same FTL technology they relied on. The beams appeared directly next to their targets, giving no warning, allowing no defense. 5 battleships exploded simultaneously. They died without ever knowing what killed them. Thresh jerked in his seat as more ships died. How are they doing this? His science officer checked the readings. Commander, they're using our own technology against us. Those beams are traveling through hyperspace. That's impossible. They don't have FTL weapons. They do now, sir. Colonel Sangmi led her Ghost Squadron on a wide patrol around Jupiter. Her orders were simple: find any ships trying to hide in the outer system and eliminate them. Contact, her sensor officer reported. 300 ships near Jupiter's moon Io. They appear to be trying to mine fuel. Sangmi smiled coldly. They think they can resupply out here where we can't reach them. Let's teach them otherwise. All ships, attack formation. The Ghost Squadron moved in silence. The at Io were focused on their mining operation, trying desperately to gather enough fuel to attempt another escape. They had their shields at minimum power to conserve energy. That was their mistake. Sangmi's ships appeared from the shadow of Jupiter itself. They had been hiding in the planet's massive electromagnetic field, invisible to sensors. Now they opened fire at point-blank range. The 300 ships barely had time to react. Some got their shields up. A few managed to fire back, but most simply died, torn apart by kinetic weapons and human missiles. Targets destroyed, Sangmi reported. No survivors, moving to next search grid. Engineer Jinwoo activated his ultimate creation. The gravity well generators around Jupiter had been running at low power, creating the trap that kept them from escaping. Now he turned them up to maximum. Jupiter's immense gravity, already powerful enough to tear moons apart, became a weapon. The generators focused and amplified those gravitational forces, creating currents and eddies in space itself. 400 ships, trying to position themselves for another escape attempt, found themselves caught in an artificial gravity current. They were pulled toward Jupiter like leaves in a stream. Their engines couldn't fight against the pull. The ships hit Jupiter's atmosphere at tremendous speeds. The gas giant crushed them, compressed them, and swallowed them without a trace. Admiral Soon's submarine fleet had returned to orbit. Her crews were tired but determined. They had destroyed over 600 enemy ships in the battle for Earth. Now they had a new mission. "We're hunting the command ships," Soon told her captains. "They can't coordinate their fleet without their command vessels. We destroy those and the rest will scatter." Her fleet moved through space in a tight formation. They used Earth's moon to mask their approach, staying in the shadow until the last possible moment. Then they appeared behind the main formation and opened fire. Command ships were heavily armored and protected, but Soon had planned for this. Her ships fired specialized missiles, not designed to penetrate shields, but to generate massive electromagnetic pulses. The imps overloaded the shields and electronics. While the command ships were blind and defenseless, Soon's second wave struck. Kinetic torpedoes, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, hammered into the disabled vessels. Armor that could withstand plasma fire crumpled like paper. 12 command ships died in the first minute of the attack. On the Dominator, alarms screamed across every console. Thresh could barely hear his officers over the chaos. "Sir, we've lost contact with most of the fleet. Command networks are down. Ships are breaking formation." "How many ships do we have left?" Thresh demanded. The tactical officer checked his failing systems. "Best estimate, 2,853 ships still operational, but they're scattered across the entire system. We can't coordinate them." Thresh felt his 4 eyes close in despair. In less than a week, he had lost over 7,000 ships. Earth hadn't lost a single major vessel. This wasn't a battle. This was an extermination. "Sir," his communications officer shouted, "the humans are broadcasting again." Admiral's face appeared on every screen. He sat in his command chair, looking calm and professional. "Commander Thresh said, 'You came to our home, you threatened our families, you tried to make us slaves. Now you're learning what happens when you wake up a predator. We're not done with you yet. We're going to hunt down every single ship in your fleet. We're going to study your technology. We're going to learn everything about your empire. And then we're going to make sure you never threaten Earth again.'" The transmission ended, but the message was clear. They weren't going to be allowed to escape. They were going to be destroyed. Captain Dong's squadron found a group of 50 ships trying to hide in the asteroid belt. They thought the rocks would provide cover. They were wrong. The human fighters moved through the asteroids like they were born there. They used the rocks as cover and concealment, appearing and disappearing, firing and retreating. They tried to fight back, but they couldn't match the humans' agility. One by one, the ships died. "That's 50 more down," Dong reported. moving to the next target. All across the solar system, the same scene played out again and again. They were being hunted. Their ships were being destroyed. Their fleet was being eliminated piece by piece. And there was nothing they could do to stop it. Commander Thresh knew it was over. His fleet, once the pride of the Empire, was reduced to scattered groups of desperate ships. They had been fighting for 8 days. 8 days of constant attack, constant losses, constant terror. "How many ships remain operational?" he asked quietly. His tactical officer's voice was barely a whisper. 127, sir." 127 ships from 9,900. The greatest invasion fleet in history had been destroyed by the species they had called primitive. Thresh looked at the faces of his remaining officers. They were exhausted, traumatized, broken. These were warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds. Now they looked like frightened children. "Sir, the humans are broadcasting again," the communications officer said. This time it was President who appeared on the screens. She stood in what looked like a memorial hall. Behind her, walls were covered with names, millions of them. "Commander Thresh," she began, "you're probably wondering why you're still alive, why we haven't destroyed your remaining ships." Thresh said nothing, he just listened. "We're letting you go," continued. 127 ships. That's exactly how many we're allowing to escape. Not one more, not one less. You need to take a message back to your empire. You need to tell them what happened here. You need to make them understand what humans are capable of when we're threatened." She gestured to the walls behind her. "These are the names of the 2,400,000 humans who died in your invasion. Every single name is recorded here. We will never forget them, and we will never forgive those who killed them. But we're not monsters. We're not going to hunt you across the galaxy. We're going to give you a chance to leave, a chance to go home, a chance to tell your leaders that Earth is forbidden territory. In 1 hour, we will open a single hyperspace corridor. It will lead directly to the edge of your empire's space. You will take that corridor and leave. If you try to attack us, if you try to stay, if you try anything except leaving, we will destroy every last one of your ships." The transmission ended. Thresh sat in silence for a long moment. "Prepare the fleet," he finally said. "We're going home." Exactly 1 hour later, human gravity generators created a stable hyperspace passage. It was a demonstration of power that terrified them even more than the weapons had. The humans understood technology better than they did themselves. The 127 remaining ships entered the corridor and accelerated. As they jumped to hyperspace, Thresh looked back at Earth's solar system through his. What he saw made his blood freeze. The humans were building. Massive construction platforms floated near Earth, assembling new ships. But these weren't like the small fighters and submarines that had destroyed his fleet. These were capital ships, battleships, dreadnoughts, ships that dwarfed even the largest vessels. And they were being built from the wreckage of his own fleet. "How many ships are they constructing?" Thresh whispered. His sensor officer checked the readings before they jumped. "Initial scans suggest 10,000 hulls under construction, sir, maybe more." 10,000. Earth was building a fleet larger than the one that had come to invade them. The hyperspace corridor closed behind the ships. They were gone. On Orbital Station Phoenix, Admiral watched the last ships disappear. Lieutenant stood beside him. "Sir, do you think they'll come back?" the young officer asked. Shook his head. "No, we made sure they understand the cost, but other species will hear about this. Some will be afraid of us, some will respect us, and some will want to test us." "Then we'll be ready," said. Looked at Earth below. The planet still bore scars from the invasion, cities damaged, satellites destroyed, and 2,400,000 people dead. "Yes," he said, "we'll be ready." Captain Dong landed his fighter at Moon Base for the last time. The base was being decommissioned. It had served its purpose as a hidden military installation. Now it would become what it was originally supposed to be, a civilian colony. One walked beside him as they left the hangar. "What's next for you?" she asked. Dong looked at the transfer orders in his hand. "They're forming a new fleet, Deep Space Patrol. They want experienced pilots." "The new ships?" He nodded. "We're not staying in the solar system anymore. We're going to explore and defend our territory." "Our territory," one repeated. "That sounds strange. A week ago we were defending Earth. Now we have territory." Doctor stood in the CERN facility, looking at the massive particle accelerators. They had fired thousands of shots during the battle. They had killed hundreds of ships. Now they would go back to being science equipment. "Mostly." "We're keeping the weapons capability, right?" Jinwoo asked. Smiled. "Of course. But we're also using what we learned to build better FTL drives. The technology was crude compared to what we can make. In 5 years, human ships will be faster than anything else in the galaxy." "Think we'll find friends out there?" Jinwoo wondered. "Maybe," replied. "But if we don't, if everyone out there is like the we'll handle it." Colonel Sangmi received a new assignment. Her Ghost Squadron was being expanded. Instead of a few dozen stealth ships, she would command hundreds. They would be Earth's silent guardians, moving through space unseen, watching for threats. "Where are we going first?" her executive officer asked. Sangmi looked at the star chart. "Space. We're going to watch them, make sure they don't forget their lesson." Admiral Soon walked through the memorial hall where President had given her speech. She stopped at one wall and found a name, Park Min. He had been one of her submarine captains. His ship had taken a direct hit during the battle for Earth. No survivors. She touched the name gently. "We won, Min. You can rest now." 3 weeks after the battle ended, Commander Thresh arrived at the home world. His 127 ships limped into orbit, damaged and barely functional. The High Council demanded an immediate report. Thresh stood before them, still wearing his battle-damaged armor. He told them everything. The trap, the hidden weapons, the invisible fighters, the gravity weapons, the millions of human soldiers who fought with a ferocity no species had ever shown. "We need to assemble another fleet," one council member said. "A bigger one. We cannot let this insult stand." Thresh looked at him with his 4 eyes. "You weren't there. You didn't see what I saw. You didn't watch 9,000 ships die in 8 days. Earth is preparing a fleet of 10,000 warships, maybe more. They have our technology now. They've improved it. They're faster than us, smarter than us, more creative than us. And they're angry. If we go back, we won't come home. None of us will." The council chamber fell silent. Finally, the High Counselor spoke. "Then what do you suggest?" "Mark Earth's sector as forbidden," Thresh said. "Tell every species in the galaxy. Tell them that humans are not prey. They're predators. And if you attack them, they won't just defend themselves. They'll hunt you to extinction." The council agreed. Within days, every species in the galaxy received the same message. Earth was off limits. The humans were not to be disturbed. Some species laughed at the warning. Humans were young and small. How dangerous could they be? Those species would learn, eventually. On Earth, President stood at the memorial wall again. She placed her hand on the stone, feeling the names carved beneath her fingers. "We survived," she said softly. "Because of you, because of everyone who fought, everyone who prepared, everyone who believed we could win." Admiral walked up beside her. "The new fleet will be operational in 6 months. We'll have patrols extending to 50 light years from Earth." "Good," said. "Make sure they know we're not looking for war. But if war comes looking for us again, we'll be ready." Nodded, always ready. High above Earth, the construction continued. New ships took shape in orbit. Ships with human names: Defender, Vengeance, Victory. Ships that carried the lessons learned from the invasion. ships crewed by men and women who remembered the 2,400,000 who died. Earth had been tested, Earth had survived, and now Earth was ready for whatever the galaxy would bring next. The message had been sent, written in the wreckage of 9,773 ships. The message was clear: humanity doesn't break, humanity doesn't surrender, and humanity doesn't forget. The galaxy had been warned.